I shouldn't have noticed the way her smile lingered on me, not like that. It was the kind of smile that made the air heavy, that stayed in the room after she left. Her voice still echoed in my head when she said it. My son's room is empty, but my bed won't be if you're brave enough. Half a joke, maybe? Or not? I couldn't tell. The first night in her house was quiet, too quiet. I dropped my bag by the door, trying not to look lost, though I probably did. She was already in the kitchen, barefoot, pouring herself a glass of water. The light above her was soft, almost too soft, and it caught the edges of her face, a face that carried years, but wore them like elegance. She noticed me standing there, staring longer than I should. Thirsty? She asked. Just one word, and my throat went dry. I nodded, but I didn't move. She crossed the room instead, set the glass in front of me. Her fingers brushed mine, just briefly. Too brief to mean anything, unless you were already wondering if it did. I was. Her perfume was subtle, something floral, something that reminded me of walking past the garden at night. It stayed with me as I sat down, pretending to be calm. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me like she already knew what I was thinking but was too gracious to say it out loud. You look tired, she murmured. I shrugged, tried to smile. Long day. Her eyes softened, then narrowed just slightly, not suspicion, not judgment. Something else. A pause stretched between us, and I didn't know how to fill it. I wanted to ask why she'd really offered me this place. She didn't have to. She had her own life, her own world. But instead I said nothing. My silence hung there, and she didn't break it either. Only the faint hum of the fridge filled the space. I noticed the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way her shoulders shifted as if she wasn't sure whether to step closer or farther. Confidence and hesitation, wrapped together. Do you need anything else tonight? She asked finally, her voice low. I almost said no. But the word caught in my mouth stuck there. She tilted her head slightly, waiting. Her eyes, they didn't just look at me. They held me, pinned me, like she was searching for something beneath the surface. And I realized I was breathing too shallow, too quick. When she walked past me to put away the glass, her arm brushed against mine. Not deliberate, maybe, but not careless either. My skin burned where she touched me. I stood too fast, my chair scraping lightly against the floor. She turned back, surprised, lips parting as if she was about to say something but thought better of it. The space between us felt smaller than it really was. Her presence filled it, like heat, like gravity. I couldn't step away. She smiled then, softer than before, and the corner of her mouth trembled just enough to make me wonder if she was as steady as she wanted me to believe. You'll be fine here, she said, barely above a whisper. You'll get used to me. The words hung in the room, heavier than the silence that followed. I swallowed hard, unsure if I should laugh, answer, or just stand still until she looked away. But she didn't. She kept her gaze on me, steady, almost staring. Then, from upstairs, a door creaked open. Footsteps. She froze, and so did I. Her eyes flicked to the ceiling, then back to me, sharper now, unreadable. Go on, she said, her tone clipped, though her eyes betrayed something else. Get some rest. I hesitated, one more second, before moving past her. The warmth of her body was still close enough to feel. And as I climbed the stairs I knew, sleep wasn't going to come easily tonight. The next morning, I found her at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee cupped in both hands. The sunlight broke across her face, softening the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. She didn't look like the woman from last night, the one who left me half afraid, half awake. She looked ordinary, almost gentle. And somehow, that was harder to handle. You're up early, she said, not looking at me right away. I don't sleep well in new places. I shifted, hoping she couldn't hear how rehearsed that sounded. Truth was, I didn't sleep because her voice, her smile, the nearness of her, replayed in my head until dawn. She nodded, as though she understood too well. A long pause followed before she added, It's the same for me. Nights feel louder when you're alone. The way she said alone lingered in the air. I watched her fingers trace the rim of her cup. Not absent-mindedly, more like a habit. Something she did when she was holding back. I wanted to ask how long, but I didn't. Instead, I busied myself with the coffee pot, pouring too much, spilling a little on the counter. Her laugh was soft, almost reluctant. Careful. That thing bites. It wasn't much, but it cracked something open. She leaned back, watching me again. The silence stretched, and I knew she was measuring me. Noticing things she wasn't supposed to. You remind me of someone, she said suddenly. Her voice caught slightly on the words. Your son? I asked, regretting it the second it left my mouth. Her expression shifted, a flicker of hurt, quickly masked by a half-smile. No. Not him. She didn't say more. She didn't have to. The space between us filled with ghosts either of us dared name. When I sat down, our chairs were too close. I noticed the faint perfume still clinging to her robe. My hand brushed the table, and hers was already there, not touching, but close enough that my skin warmed with the thought of it. You're staring, she murmured without looking up. Heat rushed to my face. I looked away, then back, caught. She finally met my eyes, and there it was, that same pull, that same unspoken dare. Sorry, I said. Her lips curved. Don't be. The words should have been nothing, but they weren't. They sank deep, into the part of me that didn't care about age or circumstance, only about the way she made silence unbearable. I shifted in my seat, but she leaned forward slightly, closing the space. Her hand lifted as if to adjust my collar, but lingered too long on my shoulder. Warmth spread through me, sharp and undeniable. I couldn't move. Didn't want to. Her breath brushed my cheek when she spoke, low and quiet. You'll get used to the house. To me. Something in her tone wavered, half invitation, half warning. The moment stretched, fragile and dangerous, until the kettle on the stove whistled sharply. She pulled her hand back, almost too fast, almost guilty. But her eyes stayed on me, holding me there. Neither of us moved to turn off the kettle. It happened in the hallway. I was reaching for the shelf above her when she stepped closer, almost too close, to hand me the book I hadn't noticed she already had in her grasp. Our fingers touched, either of us letting go right away. You could have just asked, she said, her voice light, but her breath caught, and I heard it. I didn't want to bother you, I murmured. Her lips parted, the smallest intake of air. She was close enough that I could smell the faint trace of coffee still on her. I felt her presence before I dared to look down at her. The moment held. Too long. The creak of the front door shattered it. Her hand snapped back, the book pressed against her chest. A voice carried through the hall, a neighbor, calling her name, cheerful and oblivious. Her body went rigid. She stepped back quickly, smoothing her hair with a practiced gesture, the kind that came from years of hiding cracks no one else was meant to see. Wait here, she whispered, sharp but soft, and was gone before I could answer. I stood there, heart pounding, the heat of her touch still on my skin. I could hear the conversation by the door, too normal, too casual, while everything in me still hummed with the weight of what almost happened. When she returned, she closed the door a little harder than necessary. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were not. Sorry, she said flatly. For what? She didn't answer. Instead, she brushed past me, her shoulder grazing mine. Deliberate or accident? I couldn't tell. But I followed her into the kitchen, where she leaned against the counter, arms folded. You shouldn't. She started, then stopped. The words dissolved unfinished. I waited. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. People talk. I don't care what people, you should. Her voice cut through sharp. But then, quieter. I should. Silence pressed between us. My pulse thundered in my ears. I wanted to say more, to tell her she was wrong, but the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I stepped closer. Just one step. Her arms didn't uncross, but her breath changed, shallow, uneven. She didn't move away. "You're too young," she whispered, barely audible. "I'm here," I said. It was all I had, all I could offer. Her eyes finally met mine. For a second, we weren't separated by age, or fear, or the weight of what we weren't supposed to want. I thought she'd turn her face. She didn't. Her lips were inches from mine, her breath warm against my skin. I leaned in, not all the way, just enough that the world blurred into that narrow space between us. Her hand lifted, fingers brushing my jaw, then stilled. She closed her eyes, as if the gesture itself betrayed too much. And then, before either of us could close the last inch, her phone buzzed on the counter. We froze. The sound was small, ordinary, but it cut through the room like a siren. She pulled back, slow, reluctant, eyes lingering on mine even as her hand fell away. The phone kept vibrating unanswered. And though we hadn't kissed, the space between us had already broken, and there was no pretending it hadn't. It was late when it finally broke. The house was quiet except for the rain tapping against the windows. I found her in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch with a blanket draped loosely around her shoulders. The TV was on, sound low, but she wasn't watching it. She looked up when I stepped in. No words. Just eyes that lingered too long. "You're not asleep either," I said softly. Her mouth twitched in something between a smile and a sigh. "I don't sleep much these days." I hesitated, then sat down, leaving a careful distance. It didn't last long. She shifted, the blanket slipping, and when I reached instinctively to pull it back up, my hand brushed her arm. Warm. Too warm. She froze, eyes flicking to my hand. I pulled back, but too slowly. The silence that followed was louder than the rain. "Why are you here?" she asked suddenly, her voice low but sharp. "You know why." Her breath hitched. She turned away, eyes fixed on the dark screen. "You think you do? But you don't understand what this would mean, for me." I leaned forward, my words quiet, almost pleading. "Then explain it." She laughed, brittle, shaking her head. "You're young. You'll find someone who doesn't have." She trailed off, biting her lip. Her shoulders tightened as though she could carry the weight of the years between us. I couldn't hold back anymore. My hand reached, hesitating, then gently brushing the strand of hair that had fallen across her face. Her eyes closed at the touch. A soft, involuntary surrender. "Stop," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't. My fingers lingered, tucking the hair behind her ear. Her skin shivered beneath my touch. "You don't want me to," I said quietly. Her eyes flew open, locking on mine. The storm outside seemed to vanish. Only her, only the space between us that shrank with every unspoken word. "You're wrong," she whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Her body leaned, just slightly, into mine. Her shoulder brushed against me, her breath grazing my neck. My chest tightened, every nerve alive with the nearness of her. "I can't," she started, but the words caught. My hand found hers on the couch. I didn't grip it, just rested there, waiting. She didn't pull away. Her fingers twitched beneath mine, then stilled, surrendering. The rain hammered harder against the glass. My heart pounded loud enough I was sure she could hear it. Her lips parted, her face tilting just enough to close half the distance. Her breath mingled with mine, warm, uneven, fragile. "If we do this," she murmured, her forehead brushing against mine now, "there's no going back." I whispered. "Then don't stop me." Her hand lifted to my chest, not to push me away, but to feel the quick rhythm beneath her palm. We hovered there, breathless, the world narrowing to that single heartbeat. And then, a knock on the door. Sharp. Loud. We both flinched, frozen, caught between retreat and surrender. The knock at the door didn't stop. 3-4 times, urgent, insistent. She pulled away first, her breath sharp, her body tense as she tightened the blanket around her shoulders. I stood frozen, heart still racing, watching her move to the door. She opened it just a crack, voice controlled. Yes? A muffled voice answered, too low for me to make out at first. Then words drifted in. I saw his car outside. Is he staying with you? Her posture stiffened, hand tightening on the doorknob. It's late. You should go home. The voice pressed on, softer now, something like concern, or suspicion. She cut it off with a sharper tone. Good night. The door shut harder than it should have. She leaned against it, eyes closed, her breathing unsteady. You didn't tell anyone I was here? I asked carefully. Her eyes opened, landing on me. For the first time, I saw fear there. Not of me, of being seen. They assume things? She muttered, almost to herself. They always assume. I stepped closer, but she shook her head. Don't. Don't what? My voice was quiet, but my chest ached with the need to close the distance. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the blanket tighter around her. Don't make this harder. You don't know what it means for me if people start what? Thinking you're alive? That you still want something for yourself? Her lips parted, her body stilling, but no words came. The silence between us was raw, dangerous. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. My thumb brushed against her skin, trembling beneath my touch. You think I don't see it? I whispered. But I do. She inhaled sharply, her free hand pressing against my chest as though to keep me at a distance. But instead of pushing, she left it there, fingers curling slightly against my shirt. I told myself I'd never do this again, she admitted, her voice breaking. Not with someone younger, not with someone who could leave me behind. Her words hit me, heavier than I expected. But still, I leaned closer, enough that her forehead almost touched mine. Maybe I don't want to leave, I said. Her breath caught. I felt it against my lips, felt the tremor in her body as she fought the pull between us. The storm outside rattled the windows, the room dim except for the flicker of the TV. Everything pressed inward, the closeness, the truth, the risk. Her eyes glistened, and she whispered, If I give in, I won't forgive myself. Then don't forgive yourself, I answered. Just don't lie to me. Her hand slipped from my chest to my shoulder, gripping, holding, as though the decision was already made. She exhaled shakily, eyes locked on mine. Then you have to decide, right now. The choice hung there, heavy, irreversible. And still, either of us moved away. Her hand still gripped my shoulder, holding me in place as if she feared what would happen if she let go. Decide, she whispered. Her eyes were fierce, wet, unguarded. The storm outside cracked with thunder. The room seemed smaller, the air heavy with everything we hadn't said. I could feel the warmth of her body through the thin layer of fabric between us, the faint tremble in her hand as she steadied herself on me. I can't, she started, shaking her head. But her lips stayed inches from mine, her breath brushing against my skin. You already have, I said softly. Her eyes closed, and for a moment I thought she'd pull away. Instead, she leaned forward barely, just enough that our foreheads touched. The contact was fragile, trembling, like the first step onto ice that might break. I'm too old for this, she whispered, but her fingers curled tighter into my shirt. And I'm too young to let it go, I murmured back. A silence fell, the kind that carried weight, decision, inevitability. The world outside could have ended, and I wouldn't have noticed. Only her, the closeness, the raw fear tangled with want. Her hand slid from my shoulder to my jaw, her thumb brushing the corner of my mouth. My chest tightened. That one small touch unraveled the last of my restraint. I tilted forward, just enough. Our lips almost touched, not quite, but close enough that every breath mingled, every heartbeat thudded in sync. If we cross this line, she breathed, voice breaking, there's no undoing it. I held her gaze. Then don't undo it. The dam broke. Her lips found mine in a sudden, desperate kiss, not practiced, not cautious, but raw and trembling. Years of silence and denial poured into that single moment. She clung to me, and I held her as though letting go would tear something vital away. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, uneven, almost startled, but it was real. When she finally pulled back, her breath was ragged, her cheeks flushed. She didn't look away. Neither did I. Her hand still rested against my chest, feeling the wild beat beneath. My hands lingered at her waist, reluctant to break the hold. For the first time, there was no mask in her expression. No guarded smile, no careful distance. Just her, vulnerable, afraid, alive. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered, her voice trembling with something between fear and relief. "Yes, I do," I said, steady now. "I chose you." The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was full of acceptance, of something we could never take back, and didn't want to. The storm raged on outside, but between us, there was clarity. Whatever came next, we knew. We had crossed the line. And neither of us would ever pretend again. The storm passed by morning. The house was quiet again, the air heavy with that strange calm that follows thunder. I found her in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the counters, turning her hair almost golden. She was barefoot, pouring coffee, like nothing extraordinary had happened the night before. But it had. She looked up when I entered. For a moment neither of us spoke. Just silence, charged, remembering. "You should eat something," she said softly, her voice steadier than I expected. "I'm not hungry." I leaned against the doorway, watching her. "Not for food." Her hands stilled on the coffee pot. A flicker of a smile touched her lips, but it was nervous, fragile. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because," she exhaled, shaking her head, then finally met my eyes. "Because it makes me want to believe you. And that scares me." I crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate. She didn't move away. When I was close enough, I reached for the cup in her hand, setting it gently on the counter. Her fingers trembled as they left the handle. "You don't have to be scared," I whispered. She laughed softly, almost bitter. "Easy for you to say. You don't know what people will think." I took her hand, threading my fingers through hers. She didn't resist. The warmth of her palm pressed into mine, grounding us both. "I don't care what people think," I said, steady now. "I care about you." Her eyes softened, a sheen of tears she didn't let fall. She leaned her forehead against mine, closing the space without hesitation this time. My free hand rose instinctively to her back, holding her there, not too tight, just enough. For a long moment we stood like that, no words, just breath, touch, presence. When she finally pulled back, she touched my face with both hands, her thumbs brushing lightly along my jaw. Her expression carried years of regret and fear, but also something else, something lighter. "You'll leave one day," she whispered. Not an accusation, just the truth she'd lived before. "Then I'll come back," I answered. Her laugh was quiet, shaking, but real. She leaned in, pressing her lips to my forehead, a kiss that was tender, almost reverent. It wasn't about possession. It wasn't about youth or age or fear. It was about choosing each other, right here, right now. When she drew back, I pulled her into my arms fully this time. She melted against me, her cheek resting against my chest. Her arms wrapped around my waist, holding me like she finally allowed herself to. We stayed there, just breathing together, until the clock ticked past the moment we both knew we'd remember. No more pretending. No more almosts. We were together. And that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?